Welcome to this Dgraph tutorial. Today we will see how to create a React application based on the GraphQL API hosted by Dgraph using Oracle and GraphQL code generator. We are assuming that you already have a GraphQL schema deployed in a Dgraph cluster with some data created in Dgraph. In our case, the data model is about public schools in the US with associated projects and donations. You may have used the GraphQL endpoints with a GraphQL client, such as Postman, and verified that you can retrieve some data. With Node and Yarn installed, let's use Create React App, which is an officially supported way to create single-page React applications. So we simply create our app structure and use TypeScript as we want a strongly typed programming language to speed the development while reducing the potential errors. We will just add a UI framework and we opted for Bootstrap. Let's open our app in VS Code and add the Bootstrap CSS. Then we can modify the generated app to start with a simple header. And from there, we can just launch the app. We are now adding CodeGen from the guild that will generate code from our GraphQL schema and our GraphQL documents. We need the GraphQL package, as well as the CodeGen CLI, and we also need the client preset. We can now initialize the code generator. When asked about the schema, we simply give the Dgraph GraphQL endpoint that we can copy from Dgraph dashboard. We will put our GraphQL operation in a TS file, and we want the generated code to be in GQL folder. Let's finish the configuration. And we can just install the packages. Let's have a look in VS Code. We can always modify the configuration file for the code generator, and in our case we want to disable the fragment masking. We also create the GQL folder where the code will be generated. We are also adding the GraphQL language support extension to VS Code to introspect our GraphQL schema and help with autocompletion. We just have to create a configuration file and to configure the extension by providing our GraphQL endpoint and specifying where our GraphQL request will be. A VS Code restart is needed at this stage. That's it for the code generator. Now we need a client to fetch the data, so we will use Oracle, which has a binding for React. Let's add the Oracle package, and then we can create a client and a provider. We just need a create client and a provider object, and we are initializing the client with our GraphQL endpoint. We can also add some security headers that we don't need in this tutorial. When the client is created, we can enclose our app with a provider using our client. With that done, we have a very robust factory in place. Our React application can fetch data on the GraphQL endpoint. We have a code generator that can introspect our schema and generate the types for the queries that we will need. Let's jump to the fun part of creating a page. So we'll display a list of schools. So to do that, let's start by creating a components folder, and we'll create a file, TypeScript file, where we will put our GraphQL operations and fragments. To see the magic happening, we will just start the code generator. So now it will monitor what we are doing in the TS files and generate the types for us. So for the school, we just need a fragment, and you'll see that VS Code is aware of our schema. So we can just, for example, put a school item on schools, which is in the known list of types, and then we can select attributes from schools, and you'll see that we can only select some attributes that are in our schema. So we cannot really make errors there, which is the purpose of having this integration with our schema. And when we save this file, you see that the generator triggers the generation of our types that we can use later on. So let's continue by creating a query. So we also have to correct the fact that GraphQL was not imported, and then we'll create a query to get, for example, the list of schools. So we can use the query school operation, and we can use the first argument to limit the list returned by Dgraph. And what we want is basically the fragment that we've declared. And that's it for the query that we need for our page. So we can create now a school component. We just need to import the school fragment that we will use as the data and some UI components. So let's create a very simple component, schools, that will have a property as a school item fragments array, and we'll just build a table. So when we are doing our list group, you can see the benefit of having a strongly typed approach, because now we can use our props data, and it is an array, so we can use a map function, and for every element we'll access all the fields of this element. In our case, we'll just use the name of the school. we just need to export our component, and that's it for the schools. We can now use our component into our application. So we need to import the use query from Oracle to fetch the data, and the type definitions and the school component. So let's fetch the data using the use query. We just have to reference the query we've created before, and we can pass the variable. In this case, it's the first 10. And with the data, we can, for example, build an array of schools. And we can just insert our component. We'll also add a message when fetching and an error message. And we've done with the application development that we wanted to do. We can just test it and launch the application. So the application will fetch the data and display the school component using our GraphQL API endpoint hosted in Dgraph. That concludes our tutorial. We have seen how to set up a React application with Oracle Client, GraphQL Code Generator, and VS Code extension, so we can safely and rapidly develop UI components based on a GraphQL API exposed by Dgraph.